Hey guys, it's JMPDoubleX here, and today I'm gonna go through the Titan Sunbreaker subclass, what perks are the best to use for PvP and PvE, what perks you should be using over other perks, and give you some tips and tricks along the way, so here we go. First, let's go with the grenades. The fusion grenade is a sticky nade. When attached to targets, it does bonus damage. It is a very good PvP grenade. Anything that you want dead fast, this is the grenade that you want for PvP. In PvE, it is also a great grenade, doing massive damage to higher tier enemies to finish them off quickly with your weapon. Overall, this is one of the good grenades out of the three. Second is the thermite grenade. A grenade that sends forward a burning line of fire. Now this grenade, I thought it was gonna be good, but it turns out that this grenade isn't as good as it looked at the beginning. I wouldn't recommend using this grenade. In PvE, it's a decent grenade. In PvP, it doesn't do enough damage to make you use it over the other two grenades. Lastly, the incinerate grenade from the hunters. A grenade that causes damage over time when enemies get hit by it. They buff this grenade, so if an enemy stands directly underneath it, it does a total of 170 damage, and then the DOT will take over and kill the enemy no matter what. If you're a pass multiplayer Halo player, this grenade feels right at home, as it is pretty much a copy of a frag grenade from Halo, and you can do a lot of strategic plays with this grenade. Overall, this is my favorite grenade for PvP. For PvE, it's a very good grenade as well. Overall, the top two grenades are fusion grenade and incinerate grenade, but it's all on your personal preference which one you like, but I would go with incinerate grenade. For the Titan lifts, increased height is the first lift. This is a very good lift overall, but it does depend all on your personal preference. I like increased control a lot more, just because you can move a lot faster around the map. And then catapult is, I believe, is still pretty useless. So the best jumps are increased height and increased control, but it all depends on your personal preference. Hammer of Soul. Summon a flaming hammer and wreak destruction upon your enemies. Now, if some of you guys didn't know, Hammer of Soul has pretty much grenades in horseshoes like the perk on the rocket, which is pretty insane. Forge Master, this is the PvP perk that you want. Throw more hammers, and hammers cause bigger explosions. This is the one perk that you want for PvP, just because you can throw that extra hammer, and it's always good to have an extra hammer in PvP. And it also makes it a lot easier to get multi-kills because of the bigger explosion. Sun Charge. Press R3 during Hammer of Soul to hurl yourself forward. Enemies in your path explode, chaining fiery damage to other enemies. Now this perk is more of a trolling perk. I wouldn't recommend using this perk for either PvP or PvE over the other two perks, as this one takes up a lot of your super energy once you do the Sun Charge. And in PvP, you can easily miss Sun Charge and waste that super energy. Overall for PvE, it's a decent perk, although not better than the other two perks. Scorched Earth is the PvE perk that you want. Initiate the world, creating sunspots everywhere your Hammer of Soul impacts. So anywhere where your Hammer of Soul impacts, it creates a DOT zone. This perk is very, very good for bosses that don't move around a lot in PvE. And PvP, it's not worth using over Forge Master. Scorched Earth is a very good perk for tank bosses like the spider tanks and those Cabal tanks, because they do massive damage. Overall, this is the very good PvE perk. So the best perks out of these ones are Forge Master for PvP and Scorched Earth for PvE. Sunstrike, burn your enemies with a heavy solar melee strike. The Sunstrike melee is a very good Titan melee, probably the best one out of all three subclasses. Melting Point, burn away your target's defenses. While burning, targets are weakened to both you and your allies. This is a must for PvE, only on bosses. Melting Point is very, very good on bosses, as you and your allies can do massive DPS on the enemy that you just meleeed. I believe Melting Point lasts about 6 seconds. I'm not too sure, but it is a must for PvE bosses. Thermal Vent Sunstrike releases a solar explosion on hit, kills create a sunspot that damages enemies inside. Back in my early days of PvP with the Sunbreaker, this is the melee that I would use the most because every time I killed an enemy, they would create a sunspot. They would take DOT. But right now, Thermal Vent isn't as good as Melting Point and Stroke the Forge. The third melee, Stroke the Forge, reduces Sunstrike cooldown. Getting a killing blow with Sunstrike instantly recharges it. This is a must perk for PvP, and for PvE, it is a very good perk. For those of you who did not know, Sunstrike does 77 extra DOT in PvP. So that is 11 ticks of 7 damage, which is absolutely ridiculous. Stroke the Forge in PvE is also very good on low tier enemies, meaning you can melee thralls and dregs and keep recharging your Sunstrike. Overall, the best melees for Sunstrike is Stroke the Forge, both for PvP and PvE. When you get to enemy bosses in PvE, you want to switch up to Melting Point to absolutely wreck the enemy boss. For the Titan codexes, my personal preference is I always go with more armor, but it all depends on your guys' personal preference. You can either max out your recovery or your agility, but I like going with more armor. If you have max armor in PvP, you can tank a golden gunshot, you can also tank a high-powered headshot sniper, and much more. I feel like the Sunbreaker's damage resistance is up 5 extra points, which is 55 damage resistance. I think it should just be 50 damage resistance like all the other subclasses. Now for the 6th column of perks, Flame Seeker. Your Hammer of Soul will alter its flight path to seek out your enemies. This is the perk that you want for PvP. Just having that Hammer of Soul following your enemy is what you want on your Hammer of Soul. And did I forget that it also boosts your recovery and agility, which is always great. Explosive Prior is also a very good PvP perk. It is also very good for PvE. Killing low or even mid-tier enemies in PvE will cause them to explode, causing even more damage to nearby enemies, which is an absolute good perk for both PvP and PvE. And then there's Fleet Fire. Enemies felled by your fire grant you bonus agility and reload speed, stacks up to 3 times. Now this is more of a PvE perk. The way you activate your Fleet Fire perk is by your grenades and your Sunbreaker, of course, as well as Sun Charge kills. Although Fleet Fire seems like a good perk overall, there's no way I would use Fleet Fire over Flame Seeker in PvP. Now in PvE, it's more acceptable. It's always good to have more reloading speed and agility, so this is a pretty good PvE perk. But overall, the best perks for the 6th column is Flame Seeker for PvP, Explosive Prior, both for PvP and PvE. Remember, it all depends on personal preference. I would go with Flame Seeker for PvP and Explosive Prior for PvE. And also, if you have Immolation Fists, those already give you Explosive Prior, which is very good for PvP. And for the last column of perks, Shimmering Flames. When super is full, grenade and melee abilities recharge twice as fast. Now the perk sounds good, but in overall honesty, this is a PvE perk. And PvP in Mayhem Clash, if you have maxed out Discipline on your grenades with Shimmering Flames on, you can do this.
Recharge so fast. My grenades recharge so fucking fast. Wow!
Pretty much trolling people, but overall this is a PvE perk. For the 2nd perk, Categorize, this is a must perk, both for PvP and PvE. Enemies brought down by your fire regenerate your health. That includes Hammer of Soul, your grenades, and your sun charge. Excellent perk for PvP, because remember, when you activate your Hammer of Sol and you're in a crowd of enemies, you're constantly taking damage. Once you kill an enemy with your Hammer of Sol, it'll regen your health, making it more possible for you to take out the entire team. So this is a must perk for PvP, and it's an excellent perk for PvE. Combine Categorize with Stroke the Forge, and you can be regenning your health all the time on low tier enemies in PvE. The last perk, Firekeeper. While standing in a sunspot, you gain an overshield and Hammer of Sol lasts longer. Now I'm gonna be honest, Firekeeper isn't as good of a perk. Compare that to Categorize. Although gaining an overshield sounds good, you're not always gonna be standing in a sunspot in PvP. And in PvE, Firekeeper isn't as good as, say, if you have Categorize, where it regens your health every time you get a kill with your ability. So overall, the best perks for the last column is Categorize, both for PvP and PvE. Shimmering Flames is good for PvE, but overall Categorize is the way to go. So really quickly, I want to show you guys my PvP loadout for my SUNBREAKER. For the perks, I go with the Incinerate Grenade. For the jumps, I go with Increased Height. For my Hammer of Sol, I go with Forge Master. For my Sun Charge, I go with Stroke the Forge. My Titan codexes are Max Armor. I put Flame Seeker, and I also have Categorize. Now for PvE, I only switch up about 2 perks. 3 when I get to bosses. So on my Hammer of Sol, I have Scorched Earth, really good for DOT. My Sunstrike, I still have Stroke the Forge because I can keep regenning my health, killing low tier enemies. And when I get to bosses, I switch it out for Melting Point. And then I switched Flame Seeker for Explosive Prior, just because you don't really need Flame Seeker in PvE. Explosive Prior is the right way to go in PvE because you can cause a lot more damage to enemies. And then of course Categorize, because it's just a must perk you need on your SUNBREAKER. So that was that, Guardians. This video took me all day to make, so if you enjoyed it and it was some help to you guys, like the video, subscribe for daily Destiny content, and thank you beautiful Guardians for watching, and hopefully this helps you become a better SUNBREAKER. So that was that, Guardians. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, Guardians, that I freaking love you, and until next time, Guardians.